Ma'am, hand over your device and return to economy immediately. This is your final warning. Security Chief Martin Voss's voice sliced through the cabin as he snatched the tablet from Dr. Renee Caldwell's hands, the device crashing to the floor with a sickening crack. Passengers gasped, but what they didn't know was that the woman they just humiliated owned the jet, and in exactly 5 minutes, the entire crew's careers would be over. Hi everyone, today we're going to tell you a true-to-life story that will shake your sense of justice and perhaps stir something inside you too. Picture this, a quiet, well-dressed woman walks onto a luxury private jet. Within seconds, she's dismissed, humiliated, and targeted like an unwelcome intruder in her own house. What no one knew was that she wasn't just a passenger. She owned the jet. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. The jet's boarding door had just clicked shut. The cabin glowed under ambient gold lighting as a handful of elite passengers began to settle into their oversized leather seats. Quiet instrumental music played softly through the overhead speakers. A fresh pot of French-pressed coffee filled the air with comfort, but all that warmth turned ice cold the moment Dr. Renee Caldwell stepped through the entryway. She wasn't flashy. No designer luggage, no personal assistant trailing her. Just a simple black cardigan over navy slacks, flat shoes, and a canvas roller bag that had seen its fair share of airports. Her hair was pulled back in a tidy bun. She moved quietly, confidently, as if she belonged. And she did. More than anyone else on that plane. But not to Captain Amanda Blake, who appeared from the galley like a warden at a prison checkpoint. Her mouth was tight, her posture military sharp. A white woman in her mid-40s with a platinum bob and a pin-perfect uniform, her tone cut like glass. "Ma'am, may I help you?" she asked, already eyeing Renee's outfit as if it were a threat to decorum. Renee simply smiled and nodded toward seat 1A. "I believe that one's mine." She held out her boarding pass printed on generic stock without the bold gold embossing of the other VIPs. Amanda didn't take the pass. Instead, she tilted her head with a smirk. "We're only seating first class at the moment." Renee blinked. "Yes, that's where I'm seated." Behind her, First Officer Ryan Keats, a tall man with graying temples and the air of someone used to being obeyed, stepped up from behind the cockpit curtain. He gave Amanda a glance that spoke volumes, another one who doesn't belong, before folding his arms and saying nothing. "I'm going to need to verify that," Amanda said stiffly. "Just stand to the side while we finish boarding the others." Renee's brows furrowed. "I don't understand." And that's when Preston Maddox, a sharply dressed man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and a silver watch so shiny it practically winked at the sun, made his presence known. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," he said loud enough for the cabin to hear. "This cabin isn't open to just anyone. No offense, of course." His smile was pure poison in a tailored suit. Renee didn't flinch, but she felt it, the weight of eyes turning toward her. The air was suddenly dense. Lauren McAdams, the head flight attendant, with a clipboard and high ponytail, stood nearby, scribbling something while giving Renee the kind of look one usually saves for suspected shoplifters. The whispers began. "I thought priority boarding ended already. Maybe she's crew family security's gonna love this one." No one asked Renee her name. No one scanned her boarding pass. No one thought to check if the woman they were boxing out might actually be the most important person on the plane. Because in their world, important people didn't wear Payless shoes or carry unbranded luggage. In their world, black women who walked with quiet authority were threats, not guests. Amanda waved at McAdams. "Can you tag this one for secondary verification?" Renee held her ground. "I'm sorry, this one," McAdams didn't answer. She tapped something on her tablet and muttered, "Flagged. Unverified." That's when Renee's tablet pinged. It was subtle, just a tiny blue notification in the corner of her screen. A live alert from Astral Airways' internal system. A note tagged under her own reservation ID. Status disruptive passenger. Recommend removal. No one had spoken to her. No one had asked anything beyond "May I help you?" Yet her digital footprint had already been stained, branded without cause. She exhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened slightly on her roller bag handle, but her voice remained calm. "Captain," she said, turning to Amanda, Please double-check your manifest. You'll find my name there. Dr. Renee Caldwell. I assure you my credentials are in order. Amanda gave a humorless laugh. Unless you're hiding a platinum invitation in that canvas bag, I'm going to have to ask you to wait in the rear cabin. We only seat verified first-class passengers here. Keats chimed in with a low grunt of agreement. I understand, Renee said. I just hope you understand what happens next. Preston chuckled. That's rich. It was then seated discreetly in seat 1D that Owen Lin, a young Asian-American travel vlogger, known for spotlighting inequality in the hospitality world, lifted his phone and began recording. He'd seen this story play out too many times, but never on a plane owned by the very woman they were dismissing. No one noticed. Not yet. Renee stepped forward. I will not move. Amanda's jaw tightened. Then I will get security. Preston rolled his eyes. Here we go. Lauren tapped her tablet again. Updating status escalated. Renee quietly slid her tablet into her bag. She looked around the cabin, saw no sympathy, just stares of silent amusement or awkward discomfort. No one was going to speak up. Not yet, but the digital world was waking up. As Amanda stormed toward the cockpit and McAdams muttered instructions to the junior crew, Owen uploaded the first 12 seconds of the video. Captioned simply "Black woman denied seat in first class. No check, no scan, just assumption. Hashtags, do your justice for Renee, Kadi Asher astral fail, Turner discrimination, in the skies," and just like that, the clock began ticking. Owen Lin sat perfectly still as his phone uploaded the clip over the jet's internal Wi-Fi. His fingers trembling not from fear, but from the righteous adrenaline that always came when witnessing something unjust unfold in real time. The video had already hit 300 views within the first minute. He refreshed again. Now over 1,000. Comments were coming in fast. Back in the cabin, Dr. Renee Caldwell stood as still as the flight crew was loud. Captain Amanda Blake had disappeared into the cockpit, likely barking orders or requesting backup from ground staff. First Officer Ryan Keats remained near the cockpit curtain, arms crossed, face hard as stone. Flight attendant Lauren McAdams hadn't even looked up from her tablet, as if coding disruptive into a profile was just another box to check before takeoff. Preston Maddox leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, watching Renee like a man pleased with himself. Not how I would have chosen to make a scene, he muttered just loud enough for those around him to hear. Renee still hadn't said much, but her silence was louder than any protest. Then it happened. The curtain parted again, brisk, calculated. Martin Voss, head of Astral Airways in-flight security, entered the cabin. Tall, broad, ex-military, early 50s. Wore his badge clipped at the belt and walked like a man who didn't ask questions, he just enforced. Without a glance at Renee's boarding pass or her ID, he stepped up beside her with all the grace of a drill sergeant. Ma'am, I need you to return to the rear cabin immediately. This area is restricted. Renee calmly asked, restricted to whom? Martin didn't flinch. To verified first-class passengers. Owen's phone buzzed. Another 1,000 views. Comments were now referencing Renee by name. Someone had found an old press release. Someone else posted a photo of her from a tech conference in Seattle. She's a CEO. She's the one behind Astral's AI program. You're profiling your boss, idiots. Martin held out a hand. Ma'am, your tablet, please. We need to verify your ID. Renee raised a brow. Now you want to verify. That did it. Martin reached out and snatched the tablet from her hands. It slipped from his grip and hit the cabin floor with a crack that echoed like thunder in a church. The passengers gasped. Even Preston flinched. Lauren McAdams stopped typing. Ryan Keats blinked. It wasn't part of the plan, and it was too much. But Renee, she didn't move. She didn't gasp. She didn't even look down at the tablet. She looked Martin straight in the eye and said calmly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your career." The silence that followed was painful, not just awkward, guilty. And Owen, he caught the entire thing. Crystal clear. He uploaded it. Caption, security head grabs device. No verification, just violence. This is first class. Hashtags exploded. Naji, justice for Renee. Astral abuse. Not your jet. CEO shutdown. In less than 3 minutes, the video reached 100,000 views. In Houston at Astral Airways Command Center, Tanya Mehta, lead systems engineer, had just finished rerouting the morning logs when a high-priority alert pinged on her screen. Live footage from the jet, a flagged passenger, status disruptive, tagged Caldwell Renee. Tanya frowned. That couldn't be right. In an instant, she traced the data tags backward. The flag hadn't come from any passenger request or system anomaly. It came directly from Lauren McAdams's manual input, time-stamped at 8:42 a.m. No ID scan, no verification attempt, just a tap and a label. She tapped her desk. Clarissa, she called to the next office. Clarissa Dominguez, Astral's chief legal officer, a Latina powerhouse with courtroom grit and zero tolerance for protocol violations, stepped in holding her mug. "Tell me we're not doing this again," Tanya said, spinning her screen around. Clarissa's eyes narrowed. "Pull the cabin audio, now." Inside, the jet passengers were no longer pretending not to care. Several had quietly pulled out their phones. One man whispered, "Did you see that?" She didn't do anything. A younger couple in row 2 looked visibly shaken. A retired school teacher clutched her purse tighter, not out of fear of Renee, but fear of what she'd just witnessed. Renee finally bent down and picked up her tablet. The screen was cracked. She powered it on anyway. It worked. A message blinked from the corner. Secure line open. HQ listening. Martin, still standing like a sentry beside her, muttered, "You need to comply or be removed." Owen stood up. "Sir, please sit down," barked Lauren. Owen held up his phone. "I think the internet disagrees." Martin turned. "Excuse me." Owen didn't blink. "You're going viral. You just assaulted Dr. Renee Caldwell, the CEO of Astral Technologies. You didn't check her ID. You didn't verify anything. You just assumed." Behind them, Preston's jaw dropped. His smug posture deflated into something far more human. In Houston, Tanya triggered Astral's emergency audit protocol. The AI began crawling through all crew actions on that flight, from manifest edits to tablet logs to prior flags in the past 6 months. The system began flashing red. Amanda Blake, 22 complaint suppressions. Ryan Keats, altered logs 14 times. Lauren McAdams, downgraded minority passengers 11 times. Martin Voss, physical contact without grounds, 3 incidents. Clarissa muttered, "It's all here." Tanya nodded, already opening the livestream channel. Back on the jet, the cabin's main screen suddenly flickered. The background music stopped. The news feed cut. The screen filled with a live feed from Astral Command. Clarissa's voice came through first. Calm, cold, unmistakable. "This is Astral Airways General Counsel speaking to all staff and passengers aboard Flight A320. Please remain seated. You are part of an active equity compliance protocol." Passengers looked around in stunned silence. Amanda had returned from the cockpit, pale. Ryan froze. Lauren clutched her tablet like it might shield her from what was coming. Clarissa continued, "Dr. Renee Caldwell is the founder and CEO of Astral Technologies. She holds full executive authorization over this aircraft and all Astral operations. We are witnessing live violations of multiple federal and corporate policies. Effective immediately, all crew members are ordered to suspend actions and await further instruction." Renee remained calm, but her eyes glinted with something sharp now. Not anger, not fear, just clarity. In one swift move, she reached into her bag, pulled out a new device, and tapped into the aircraft's control system. The cabin lights dimmed, then refocused on her row. Everyone knew without a doubt who was in charge now. The cabin of the Astral Airways jet was silent, so silent you could hear the low hum of the engines outside and the faint click of Preston Maddox's jaw tightening as reality settled in around him. Just minutes ago, he'd been the picture of smug entitlement, tossing out cutting remarks like candy. Now he looked like he was shrinking in his seat. His phone lit up on the armrest. Notifications were coming in faster than he could swipe them away. Across the aisle, Owen Lynn's camera was still recording. His latest video, Martin Voss physically grabbing Dr. Renee Caldwell's tablet, was closing in on 2 million views. A second post, this time of Clarissa Dominguez's live announcement from Astral HQ, had just broken into national trending on X. News outlets like CNN and Bloomberg were tagging it with headlines like "Astral Airways CEO denied her seat on her own jet," and live power shift at 30,000 feet. At the front of the cabin, Captain Amanda Blake stood stiffly. Her posture was no longer sharp with authority, it was defensive. Her mouth was slightly open, her gaze flicking nervously between Renee, the passengers, and the frozen flight screen. Behind her, First Officer Ryan Keats kept his arms folded, but looked visibly pale. His usual cool detachment now read as panicked retreat. Lauren McAdams tapped frantically on her tablet, trying to override the screen controls, but the system no longer responded to her access level. Tanya Mehta back at Astral HQ had revoked every clearance that wasn't Renee's. The plane had been digitally locked, and every keystroke, voice command, and facial expression was being monitored and archived in real time. And still, Renee hadn't raised her voice once. She sat down in her assigned seat 1A, crossed her legs, and opened her new device. With one tap, she reactivated her secure headset, tuned to the Astral Executive Network. A faint chime confirmed the line was live. Dr. Caldwell, Tanya's voice came through, composed but firm. We've completed the audit sweep. All crew members on this flight have active incidents tied to misconduct and unauthorized manifest changes. Legal protocols are in motion. Clarissa's voice followed. FAA has been notified. Civil rights attorneys are standing by. You're clear to speak whenever you're ready. Renee didn't answer right away. She simply looked around the cabin. Most passengers had gone still like statues in a storm. Some looked down at their hands, others locked eyes with her briefly, then turned away in guilt. A woman in row 3 began to cry quietly, her hand covering her mouth. A young man in his 20s whispered, "I can't believe we all just sat here." Martin Voss remained standing near Renee's row, but now he looked less like a guard and more like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. The damage was done, and the evidence, both digital and human, was irreversible. Renee slowly stood. The cabin's overhead lights dimmed again, an intentional cue from Tanya at HQ. A spotlight bloomed across row 1, centering on Renee. She spoke clearly, her voice calm but resonant. You have all witnessed a demonstration of how power, when unchecked, mutates into entitlement, arrogance, and abuse. You saw how I was dismissed without question, without scan, without inquiry. You saw how systems meant to serve were used instead to exclude. Her words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. I am not the first to experience this. I'm just the one who happened to be in a position to show you what it looks like in the full light of day. Passengers hung on every word. And to those who doubted me, who remained silent, who watched it unfold without stepping in, I don't blame you, because I've been there too, watching, paralyzed. But now you've seen it. And once you've seen it, you don't get to pretend anymore. The cabin monitor blinked again. Clarissa and Tanya's faces reappeared this time, joined by Astral's chairman of the board, a dignified black man named Elijah Brooks, who spoke directly to the camera. We are issuing an immediate public apology to Dr. Caldwell. Every member of this flight crew is hereby suspended pending investigation. Passenger Preston Maddox is permanently banned from all Astral and affiliate flights. Preston jolted. What you can't be. But his voice trailed off as every phone in the cabin began pinging with the official release. The news was already out. We are also cooperating fully with the FAA and the Department of Transportation's Civil Rights Office, Elijah continued. Discrimination of any kind has no place in the skies or anywhere. Renee slowly turned to Martin Voss. You never asked who I was, she said. You didn't need to. You had already decided. Martin tried to speak, but no words came out. Renee then looked at Lauren, who had finally put her tablet down. You downgraded my profile in the system before speaking a single word to me? That was not a mistake. That was a choice. Lauren's lips quivered. And then to Amanda Blake, the captain, the one who started it all. Renee's voice dipped, slightly more intimate now. You represent everything that's wrong with the old way. Pride without empathy, discipline without humanity, command without character. You flew this plane like a fortress, but you forgot the most important passenger was never outside your gates. She was already inside them, quiet, watching. Amanda blinked, her eyes glistening, but her posture frozen in fear and denial. Renee returned to her seat. We will not go back. Not today. She tapped a button on her armrest. A new screen lit up, this one labeled Astral Equity Initiative Live Launch. It displayed two things: a real-time map of the jet's route and a countdown timer labeled "Transparency begins in 000500." Passengers leaned forward. Clarissa's voice came back over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. You are now part of history. In 5 minutes, Astral Airways will go live with the Equity Initiative, an industry-first AI-driven system that will track, audit, and log every crew and customer interaction for bias, misconduct, and procedural errors. Tamper-proof, fully transparent," Tanya added, "and it starts right here. With you." Passengers applauded. It wasn't loud at first, but it grew. The quiet claps in row 2, the thankful nods from row 5, the solemn, respectful round of hands from the woman who had cried earlier. Even Owen stood, phone still recording, and whispered, This is justice." And still Renee didn't smile. She only nodded once. Not for praise, but for the truth. The cabin lights returned to normal, but the atmosphere was forever changed. Not tense anymore, just awake. The aircraft leveled into a smooth cruise above the Atlantic, but inside the cabin, no one was thinking about altitude. The digital clock on the main display ticked down 000459, 000458. Each second closer to the launch of the Astral Equity Initiative felt like a countdown to something larger than just a system update. It was a reckoning in real-time mid-air, with an audience of millions watching from every corner of the internet. Passengers who once pretended to read magazines or check emails now sat upright. Some glanced at Renee with awe, some with guilt, others with deep, silent respect. The weight of what had happened was beginning to settle on everyone, especially those who had watched injustice unfold, but said nothing. In the far left seat of row 2, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s quietly wiped her eyes with a tissue and then whispered toward Renee, "I'm sorry for what they did and for what I didn't do." Renee turned to her, nodded gently, and said, "Thank you. Your words matter." Captain Amanda Blake had retreated to the cockpit, not to pilot. She wasn't flying this plane anymore, not in spirit or authority. She sat stiffly in the jump seat, her mind racing with everything that had happened. Her hands were clenched, her career flashing before her eyes. But she knew it wasn't overreaction. It was consequence. In the main cabin, Lauren McAdams had finally surrendered her tablet. It lay screen-side down on the beverage cart, no longer a tool for control. She stared at it like it was radioactive, as if touching it again might trigger another audit. First Officer Ryan Keats sat alone near the galley wall, head down, elbows on knees. He wasn't speaking, just staring at the floor, wrestling with the fact that silence was no longer neutral. It was participation. And Preston Maddox. He hadn't moved. He didn't argue anymore. He didn't smirk. He just sat there, shoulders hunched, the glow of his phone dimmed. His private group messages, once filled with casual jokes about standards and keeping the class in first class, were now flooded with screenshots of his words going viral. His influence canceled. His company blacklisted. On screen, the countdown reached 00010. At that moment, Renee stood. Not dramatically, not with anger, but with the quiet poise of someone who knew the storm had passed, and now came the rebuilding. She walked to the center of the cabin and tapped her wrist device. The forward screen changed. A new interface, sleek and white, appeared: Astral Equity Initiative Live Deployment. The screen split. On one side, a flowchart of systems crew behavior logs, passenger interaction databases, complaint resolution stats. On the other, real-time metrics showing past audit trails, manipulations, and bias patterns. The data was clear, clean, unmistakable. Tanya Mehta's voice echoed softly over the speaker system, this time more human, more personal. This program began 6 months ago as a quiet project between Dr. Caldwell and our most trusted engineers. Our goal: create an unbiased, uneditable record of everything that happens in our skies. What started as code became conscience. Clarissa's voice followed, firm and certain. This initiative is protected by independent oversight. No one, not even executives, can delete or edit records. All passenger complaints, boarding logs, and seating changes will now be monitored and reviewed with full transparency. Passengers around the cabin exhaled. Some smiled. Some clasped hands. Some just nodded silently, holding on to a moment they never expected to witness mid-flight. Javern, Javern, 10. Javern, Javern, 09. Javern, Javern, 08. Renee turned back to her fellow travelers, her voice steady, her tone warm. For far too long, our systems have been built to serve those who already hold the power. But just as true justice means building systems that work even when no one is watching. 0, 03. 02. 1. The screen flashed. System active. A gentle chime played through the cabin. No fanfare. No fireworks. Just a simple tone that marked a profound shift in how people would be treated in the air. Across the country, the moment was broadcast live. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox picked it up. Social media exploded. Commentators called it the mid-air movement, and hashtags like Nashuri, Skies of Change, Shashin, Equity Above All, and Caldwell Protocol trended worldwide. Then came the most surprising moment of all. The young flight attendant, who had remained silent through the incident, Jordan Wells, a trainee in her early 20s, stood up and walked over to Renee. Her hands shook slightly. I didn't know what to do, she said, voice trembling. But I watched you, and now, I know I can't be part of anything like that again. Renee smiled gently. It's never too late to choose better. Jordan nodded, then turned to the rest of the passengers. I apologize. To all of you, but especially to Dr. Caldwell. I stood by when I should have spoken up. For the first time since the incident began, someone from the crew chose courage. The older woman in row 3 began clapping, then the couple across the aisle, then the young man with the glasses. One by one, the cabin filled with the sound of applause, not for spectacle, but for change. Even Owen lowered his phone, overwhelmed. You just made history, he whispered. Renee raised her hand, and the room fell quiet again. I didn't do this for applause. I did it so that no one else, regardless of color, clothing, or credit score, has to stand alone. Not anymore. Passengers whispered to one another, shook her hand as she passed, and offered business cards, notes of thanks, or simply a smile. Even the ones who had stayed silent before. Especially them. And through it all, Amanda Blake sat alone in the cockpit, facing not just the consequences of her choices, but a future she no longer controlled. Outside, the sky stretched wide across the horizon, and somewhere over the ocean, a new standard had just been born above the clouds beyond excuses, and stronger than any rank ever stitched into a uniform. The skies outside had darkened into a soft navy blue dusk, settling over the Atlantic as the jet cruised steadily toward its destination. But inside the cabin of Astral Airways Flight A320, the atmosphere had become something rare, quiet yet full of purpose. Like the silence after a storm, when the air is cleaner, the light softer, and everything feels new. Dr. Renee Caldwell stood near the center of the aisle, not with triumph, but with a kind of sacred stillness. She wasn't here to gloat. She was here to set things right. Her tablet pinged. A new message lit up on screen from the FAA's Civil Rights Division Emergency Review Panel initiated. Formal inquiry into crew misconduct approved. Another ping, this time from the Department of Transportation commendation proposal for Dr. Caldwell outstanding leadership in corporate accountability. She tapped once and forwarded both to Tanya and Clarissa at Astral HQ. No words, no commentary. The moment spoke for itself. Owen Lynn sat in his seat, wide-eyed, reading comments from around the world. This is what courage looks like. Renee Caldwell is the Rosa Parks of aviation. Never flying another airline again, Astral just became the people's airline. I cried, I stood, I shared. Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. He scrolled through the tsunami of support. Photos, videos, open letters, and testimonies were pouring in from former passengers, crew members, even executives from other airlines. One post read, I've worked in the air for 18 years. Today I saw the industry finally start to heal. The viral momentum had reached levels that even Renee, with all her technology foresight, could barely grasp. Tens of thousands of people had begun sharing their own stories of being overlooked, mistreated, or profiled in public spaces, from airports to hotels to boardrooms. One hashtag dominated now, Dakshun 5 minutes for justice. In row 4, A white-haired gentleman in a sport coat stood slowly. His voice was soft but clear. I flew with Astral for 27 years. I've seen things. I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't my place, but today I saw what it looks like when someone refuses to shrink. He turned to Renee. You didn't just change this flight. You changed me. Lauren McAdams, the lead flight attendant whose fingers once labeled Renee disruptive, without a second thought now sat motionless in the jump seat. Her eyes were glassy. She glanced at the screen showing the Equity Initiative logs. Every tag, every data edit, every denial. All of it time-stamped. All of it transparent. Ryan Keats hadn't spoken for the last half hour. But when Tanya Mehta's face reappeared on the screen alongside a live federal compliance review panel from Washington, he quietly stood up, walked to the cockpit curtain, and disappeared. His voice came through the intercom moments later. This is First Officer Keats. I relinquish all command responsibility for this flight, effective immediately. Gasps rippled, then silence. Captain Amanda Blake remained seated inside the cockpit, hands trembling slightly. She could hear everything. Every notification, every buzz, every headline. A flight attendant tapped lightly on the cockpit door. Captain FAA is requesting your immediate compliance with interview procedures upon landing. She didn't respond. She simply sat there frozen, and Preston Maddox, now stripped of all privilege and anonymity, kept checking his phone. Over 10,000 shares of the note he'd once arrogantly slipped toward Renee had now gone public. It read, "Try coach. You'll feel more at home." Now it was followed by comment after comment. You embarrass the entire industry. Hope your company enjoys being dropped by every partner. Privilege isn't the right to abuse. It's the opportunity to do good. You failed. Renee, meanwhile, had returned to her seat. She gazed quietly out the window at the horizon line, her reflection barely visible in the glass. Then a final ping. Elijah Brooks, the chairman of the board, came back on the screen. Dr. Caldwell, with unanimous support, the board has approved your proposal. Astral will immediately launch the Equity in Flight Fund, starting with a $30 million commitment to support scholarships, pilot training programs, and leadership opportunities for women, people of color, and underserved communities in aviation. He paused. And we'd like you to personally appoint the first advisory council. Renee nodded slowly, lips pressed into a faint, resolved smile. It would be my honor. Then gently she stood. Her voice was calm, her tone now soft enough to float through the cabin like a blessing. To those of you who stayed silent, thank you for seeing me now. To those who spoke up, thank you for your courage. To those who tried to erase me, thank you for revealing the cracks. You reminded me that sometimes in 5 minutes we don't just find the truth, we build the future. She looked to Owen. Keep recording. The world isn't done listening. Then she walked forward slowly as every head turned to watch. Passengers stood. They didn't cheer. They didn't shout. They simply rose row by row, hands gently clapping, not with noise but with reverence. A woman who had walked on in silence now walked off a legend.